let's say Vegas ends up having to play St. Louis in the first round. That's a tough out if you're Vegas, right?
Hmm.
Vegas is going to have a tough time against St. Louis. And even Winnipeg against St. Louis, too. Those are two divisional rivals. Today is March 26th, 2025. Welcome to the Checking From Behind podcast. I'm your host, Zach. As always, joined by my co host, Preston. Preston, I want you to guess what number episode this is today.
100.
100. We made it. It's 100. It's only been like a year or so since we actually felt ready to do it. I'm not gonna get too deep into it, but it did feel like we weren't even ready, equipment wise, to really start this until probably over last summer, like the 2024 summer.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, that's when we started to kind of hunker down a little bit. You remodeled that room. Yeah, so yeah, sounds about right.
Now, one contract extension that caught me off guard was Jakob Chychrun with the Washington Capitals. He signed an $8 by $9 million extension. I've had mixed feelings about this contract from the start since it happened yesterday. It's a good contract. It's not a great contract, but it's not a bad contract in my opinion. He's coming off.
I think he's overpaid. Yeah, I mean, good. Congratulations, Jacob. That's a hell of a contract for you. I mean, that's like number one defenseman money. I don't know if he's a true number one.
I mean, the Capitals must think he is, and this is clearly the Capitals knowing that they're not going to have Carlson for much longer because of retirement and age and whatsoever. And I mean, he's played like a number one defenseman this year. He stepped up for the Capitals when time is needed. And I'll have to dive into his a little bit of his advanced analytics here in a second because frankly, I don't know them off the top of my head. I haven't looked yet. But now the $9 million sounds rough, but I don't know if in 2 to 3 years from now, when the cap is at $110+ million, I don't know if it'll look that bad. I mean, it might be worth now a $6.5 million contract. We'll see down the road where it takes us. But again, I don't hate this, but I'm not to the point where I think it's an overpay. But I'm also not sitting here and be like, Capitals, bravo. I think it's a fair deal for both sides, and we'll see how it plays out. Maybe this is Chychrun also cashing in on a high, and the Capitals having one of the best seasons they've had in a long time since 2018 when they clearly won the Cup. So I don't know. Maybe in 3 years he's going to be playing so bad. I hope that doesn't happen for not only his sake but the Capitals' sake. But I mean, shit happens. You never know. We've seen time and time again where players who end up getting these long extensions with a lot of money, and then right after they're even their first or second year into it, they are dog shit for the entirety of the contract.
I mean, this is definitely a contract like signed with future salary cap implications in
Mm-hmm.
mind. So I agree with you. I think in a few years it's not going to look as bad. I think we just have to start getting used to players getting paid more money
You,
because for so long in the NHL, like a good contract for like an average player was like $4 or $5 million a year. And like if you were elite, you were getting like 8 or 9. Then it
mm-hmm.
got to like 10, 12, and now it's probably gonna be pushed 14. I don't. David's gonna get whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I mean, I guess the baseline for an average player is starting to go up to around 6, 7, 8 million, even $9 million. So it's maybe that's just something I personally have to get used to. But then because when I see a contract like Jakob Chychrun's at $9 million a year, you know who's making the exact same amount of money as him now?
Kel McCarr, Quinn
Yeah.
Hughes. Are both of
So
them getting the same exact? I think both are
I
right around
think
the nine. No,
Hughes might
Hughes
be
is
getting
below eight.
Hughes is
I
more.
I think I think Quinn Hughes is like 7.8 or something like that.
McCarr's at 9,
Yeah.
which is a discount. McCarr's easily worth like 12, $13 million a year.
Oh, and he's that Jesus Christ, I can't talk. His contract is up in a couple of years too. He's due for an extension next year.
Yeah, and Quinn Hughes is at 7.8 for two
Okay.
more years. Another bargain
Another.
contract.
Do you know what's crazy about those two deals is I wonder how that's gonna play out because those are two clearly of the best defensemen in the league.
Hmm.
You can say either one. I'm not gonna get mad. I'll be like, you have a valid point if you pick either of them. I know me and you are on the different sides of the spectrum, but with those two contract extensions coming up, I wonder if one of those players sits there and is like, you know what, I want to wait to see what he signs so then I can match his salary or maybe even get a little bit more. But like for example, let's say Cal McCarr ends up signing first, and he's like, you know what, I'm taking $14 million. Maybe Quinn Hughes goes to the Canucks, and he's like, Cal McCarr is making $14 million. I'm in the same stratosphere as Cal McCarr. I want 14.25,
Yeah, I mean,
or
they're
vice
both gonna
versa.
like. I mean, I think a good baseline to look at is like a player like Rasmus Dahlin, who's getting $11 million a year.
Hmm.
He's great. He's an elite defenseman, but I wouldn't say he's in that tier of like Kel McCarr and Quinn Hughes. I think those two are kind of in a tier of their own. I think Zach Werenski is very close to breaking into that tier. He's had a really good season. I need to see that a couple more times out of him. Like I draw the line at like Dahlin's getting 11. Eric Carlson still gets paid $10 million. I believe he is still the highest paid defenseman in the league. Correct me if
Yeah,
I'm wrong.
he is.
Was it 11 or 12?
The 12. It's 12. Let me double. I'll double
Yeah,
check you on that, but I'm almost 100%
I think
certain it's
I'm
12.
pretty sure it was 12.
Yeah, it is 12. His cap hits 10, but he's making 12.
Yeah. So I expect Makar. Him, I think him taking 13 or 14 would be a team friendly deal.
Thinking 14 team friendly?
Yeah,
I
for the
think
best
14.
defenseman in the
I
league. Okay,
That's
so by the
fair
time
value.
Cale Makar's contract's up, the cap's going to go up by like another $20 million.
Yeah.
And so I think at that point we're going to start seeing players get money in the range of 15 to $16 million a year. I don't think that's going to be out of the question, especially for an elite contract. Like we'll see what kind of money that these rookies now, like Celebrini, Bedard, even I think even Lane Hudson might be in line to get a gigantic payday when he's eligible if he keeps this up after his rookie year. How much money they're going to get off their rookie contract? Because I'm assuming those teams are going to want him signed to like an 8-year deal right away, because that's normally what you do with those like franchise cornerstone players. So, and then we have Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel who are due to get new contracts after next season, and they're gonna get whatever they want.
That's a good point that you brought up. And maybe I'm sitting here and undervaluing how much players are going to play into the cap raising. I think 14 would be a fair deal. Like, obviously, I think if Cal McCarr somehow pushes $16 million, that's like a Cal McCarr friendly deal. If he is pushing like 12 to 13 million, well, he'd definitely get more than 12. But like, if he's pushing 13, I think that it would be more of a team friendly deal with the Avalanche. I think 14 is fair value though. He's going to be in that ballpark. But again, if he pushes 15 or 16, I won't be sitting here and being like, "What are you like? Why are you asking for that money?" Cale Makar is one of the few players in the league that you give a blank check to. He's a difference maker on this team. Same with Quinn
Mm-hmm.
Hughes. You give a blank check to Quinn Hughes. But the one thing that worries me about Quinn Hughes though is, again, we've talked about this earlier, is if the Canucks can't get their shit together, if they miss the playoffs this year, and then if they somehow miss the playoffs next year, does Quinn Hughes sit here and be like, he wants to write out his contract and possibly walk in free agency to or get traded if they're going to end up just keep struggling this way? Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen because that's worst case scenario. If you're the Canucks, you're going to do everything in your power to keep him. You'll give him a blank check. But again, worst case scenario, Quinn Hughes rides out his contract. And he's like, you know what? Either you can trade me at the deadline or I'm walking in free agency during his UFA year.
I mean, I honestly don't think that's out of the question. I mean, he's made it very clear when all those Pedersen and JT Miller rumors were going on that he was not there to be part of a rebuild. He wanted to be on a championship caliber team, and Vancouver was an elite team last year. Like the fall off they had this year needs to be studied in a lab. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why they had a rough season this year. Just joking there. But I think, yeah, if you get to a point where, a couple years down the road and his contract's coming up and the Canucks are not really a competitive, like, I think they'll be back in the playoffs next year, honestly. I think they're going to regroup this offseason. I think they're going to get Besser re-sign, stuff like that. Because they clearly very much want to keep him if you're not going to trade a guy who's a pending UFA without a, yeah, so that'll be interesting to see what they do with him, because what a mess if they end up, he just walks.
That would be rough. They would have to not only replace him, but also get more depth, get
Hmm.
better on the blue line. They would honestly, and I mean, Demko is, I mean, his status is up in the air. It feels like every other
He can't stay on
day.
the ice. Yeah,
Right, and I know he's coming back soon if he hasn't already. But again, I mean, he comes back from injury, he gets hurt again, so we'll see with them. I
I could see
do.
them trading Thatcher Demko honestly this
They
summer.
should. They honestly should. And even if you don't get a lot back for him, you just sign Lincoln into a multi-year extension. And even
Hmm.
if you don't view him as your long-term plan at goaltender, he at least is a good enough goalie where he can be a placeholder until you can find a true number one goaltender, or maybe even run a tandem if you're the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, because I mean, he only has a $5 million cap hit, and a team will a goalie needy team will just take a chance on him just to see if he could bounce back and stay on the ice for a year. Because he's great when he's on the ice. It's just he's not on the ice that often.
Yeah, correct. You're 100% correct. I want to dive into a little bit of our quick hitters because I apparently read over that. The Islanders are back in the playoff race after their hot stretch of games over the past month.
Ooh, I'm an
However,
Islander
though,
hater.
a few nights ago they played the Columbus Blue Jackets, in which they lost in a shootout. However, though, they had a crucial call called off for goaltender interference within the last seconds of the third period. They would have won the game too. Would have given them the 2 points. Blue Jackets would have gotten nothing, and here we are. What do you think of that?
I mean, I thought the call was ridiculous, like completely ridiculous. I was talking about it with Chris yesterday at the Sabres game, and he was arguing that maybe he saw what the NHL saw. What I saw was a player that was not in the crease, and the goalie initiated the contact. That's what I saw.
Yeah, me too. Me too. You can see the goalie go out of his way, and he touched the
Hmm.
player. I don't even know what player it was.
It was Palmieri.
And so he ended up touching Palmieri, and then they did they call it no goal on the ice?
So I think they called it a goal, but then Toronto called in a review. The Situation Room did. It was not a coach's challenge.
Okay.
So yeah, Toronto itself stepped in and decided to call that a no goal, which I haven't seen them do with goalie interference like that, especially something that close. Usually that's from a coach's challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the interesting part of it, but I completely disagree with the call, and I feel like we talk about this every year. The NHL really needs to take a deep look at having a clear definition of what goalie interference is.
You need to. You can't have this wishy-washy stuff where it's like, okay, there's contact initiated. Was it the goalie? Was he pushed in? Was he
I
out of
would
the
get it
crease?
if Palmieri was in the crease
Mm,
because then Lincolns would have that right to defend his crease, and then if he initiates the contact, well, yeah, of course he's going to initiate the contact. It's in his crease, but outside of the crease, especially up high like that, that's where I have an issue with it. It didn't affect his ability to make a save. I think that was going to go in anyway. I don't think he saw the puck.
I think that goaltender interference should be conclusive. It should almost be like offsides, where if
It's
the
just
go-
I don't think it can ever be really
but
conclusive though.
this is my thing with it is I think there might be a way to. If the goalie is if contact gets initiated outside of the crease, no matter what, no goaltender interference. However, though, if the goalie is in his crease, and we're not talking about his skates are in the crease, but then he has his blocker and glove out and he hits Palmieri, for
Mhm.
example, and Palmieri is clearly outside of the crease. No, that's still not goaltender interference. The player themselves has to be in the crease without any forcible contact from the other team.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what the rule
That
is now.
should
They don't really
yes,
enforce it.
that should be the how you determine goaltender interference on these goals because it's getting ridiculous. Like a lot of people, like the casual fan, for example, it's hard for them to understand what goaltender interference is, whether it's going to be called off or not, because the NHL just
There's
makes shit up.
NHL players that don't understand it. It's not even just
Exactly.
a casual. I'm a hardcore fan and I don't understand.
Exactly.
It's like the NFL had this issue with what is a catch, and I feel like they've gotten better at determining what a catch is, but I remember that whole. You remember that Des Bryant thing
Hmm.
forever ago where he caught it, but he didn't make a football move or some bullshit like that. Whatever that means.
The NFL has done a great job with it. That the NHL needs to eventually come to a conclusion because the NFL just say that you know what, the ball can hit the ground, but as long as the player has possession and the ball doesn't move, it's still a catch. Which they did a great job on that, and the NHL needs to do something with goaltender interference with that.
Yeah, I mean the NFL is a little different though because they have a little bit more because they can pick up flags. You can't do that in
Mm-hmm.
the NHL. Like once you call a penalty, you can't undo that.
Mm-hmm.
So they have that benefit of having like the expedited review process, which was a new thing this year that I thought was really good. Just make it common, like, just make it easy. It's like okay, they clearly fucked up a call. Like
Mm-hmm.
okay, like oh yeah, we looked at it. It actually wasn't a penalty. Our bad. Let's keep playing. Like cool. They can't do that in the NHL.
No, they can't. You can't. You can't have the refs throw up their hand for what it looks like a tripping penalty. For example, Toronto buzzes down to the refs. He's like, "Hey, he just toe picked and he fell. The stick
I
just
think
happened to be by his skates."
the only thing they could do that with is with high sticking, I believe, because I was at it was a Sabres game. I don't know if I was watching on TV or I was at where they called a high sticking penalty, and then the refs talked about it, and then they watched a video and they actually high stick their own teammate.
I'm pretty sure that became like a thing a few years ago. That's really
Yeah,
recent though. That really
yeah,
recent.
and I don't know if Toronto initiated that or if that has to be initiated by the referees on the ice. That's my issue. Is I think the NHL could really stand to just be more clear and
Mm-hmm.
communicative about how they make these decisions. You might not remember this. Do you remember when Brandon Shanahan was the head of player safety for the NHL?
No.
So I want to say it was probably until around 2015, 2016, whenever he took over like the president of hockey operations of the Maple Leafs. That's when he stopped.
Okay.
And George Peros took over for him.
Yeah.
Every time there was a suspension being handed out, he would post the NHL would post a video like on social media and everything, and it'd be Brendan Shanahan going through the play step by step, explaining what the NHL saw throughout the whole play and explaining why they made their decision for the suspension. Even if it was a one game suspension, I remember when Rafi Torres got suspended for half the season for headhunting. Like they would explain
Mm-hmm.
like every step of the process. Like then also like oh this guy has a history. Like this is not the first time he's suspended. Or they look at like history of like okay how have we suspended other players that have done something similar to this that have maybe don't have a lot of suspension history stuff like that. They stopped doing that. I don't know why they stopped doing that because I thought that was a really good way to just let people let people know what your thought process is.
Yes, I love that. And again, I'm a little bit too young for that. Again, like I keep bringing that up every single episode. You're not much older than me, but again, knowledge is up here. My knowledge is like average. And I remember Peros. Like, is Peros still the head of hockey
Yeah,
operations? Okay,
he's
so
the head of player safety.
okay, yeah. So I think the NH I wish the NHL would go back to that, but again, like, why the fuck would they? Give me.
Yeah, I don't know, but I really think the NFL could not the NFL the NHL could really just stand just to be more transparent and explain things a little bit better.
It doesn't even need to be like what Brendan Shanahan did with the videos. Just like let us know, like even if it's just like a post or in the off season,
Oh, bring
figure
back the
out.
videos. The videos were awesome because they like show you the play in slow motion and they show you all the angle they have and like you see like where his elbow sticks out. Like that's not a natural motion and he clearly raises it to like go into the guy's head and then they they show you the slow mo and the player how the player got hurt and if the refs call it on the ice or not because that also can affect the suspension if they call a
Hmm.
match penalty on the ice. That's an automatic game and then they can add to it from there. But most of the time, that's good enough for them, depending on the severity of the play.
Yeah, and I think the videos would be very good for the NHL. I don't think it's 100% necessary, but I think that the NHL should
You
do
don't
it
have to do
more.
it for everything, but for something that might be a little more controversial, because there's some
Hmm.
plays where like a dude like with Trevor Zegras when he like stuck his elbow out and hit the guy and like okay he's obviously getting suspended. It's
Yeah.
just how many games?
It's like you don't need an explanation for that necessarily, but it's
Yeah.
more of the controversial ones, and I mean, I
Hmm.
I would 100% get it. I don't know where you're gonna be with this topic, but there was a fight that happened. Well, not a fight. There was an almost goalie fight between Swayman and Kemper over the weekend, last weekend. The ref stepped in. Swayman started dropping his gloves, and there was a ref on Swayman, and Kemper started coming to center ice. The second that he dropped his gloves, a ref came flying from fucking Mars and was zooming down there and grabbed on the Kemper, dude. Can the NHL stop doing this, please? Let these goalies fight. And just like I get sometimes in like big escalated situations, like grabbing onto just like skaters and not letting them fight, because then things can get out of hand with that. And all of a sudden you have like 3 fights at once and then you just lose control of the game. I get that. But when there's a situation like this, you don't need to leave from the other side of the ice and on your ice skates 30 miles per hour, half across the ice, and tackle Darcy Kemper essentially. Maybe I'm being over dramatic, but can we let these goalies fight, please?
I'm just thinking of it as from the perspective of the referee, because typically the goalies are never near each other,
Mm-hmm.
so they wouldn't really have much of a reason to fight. Like I think they view that as like an unnecessary fight because they clearly have to go out of their way to fight. Like a lot of fights just happen naturally, like a scrum in front of the net or like a big hit and
Mm-hmm.
someone standing up for a teammate, like the emotional fights. Like there's a good reason to fight for those. I think just from the ref's point of view, they just don't see it as necessary. Like they're just fighting to fight.
There's no reason to fight here. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know if there's ever really a reason for goalies to fight unless they like hate each other for other
I
reasons.
mean, there was Marty Baron and Ray Emery that fought.
They just fought the fight. That was what that fight was
Also, that was
because
probably a little bit emotional, mainly from the atmosphere of the game.
a part of the
And
reason why that fight probably didn't get broken up is because everyone else was fighting, so the
that's
refs were already
that's
busy.
exactly. I don't know the context beyond the Bruins and Kings game. However, though,
Do I? Yeah.
yeah. However, though, I get why they didn't let him. But again, I would like to see these goalies fight a little bit. But like you brought up, like it's unnecessary fighting. You kind of brought up a good point where maybe these goalies that are going to center ice and they're trying to fight, they're like, let's fucking do it for the fans. Let's just like entertain the people
Mhm.
right now. And it's like everybody else is brawling in a scrum in the corner. Let's be a part of it too. Maybe that could also be the goalies be like, we're left out of like everything. Let's fucking do it. And I don't know. I again, I don't feel like goalie fights are emotional like you said.
I mean, they definitely can be if it's like a heated rivalry, like if it was like Boston and Toronto in a playoff game, where those two teams just hate each other. There would be some emotion behind that, but between
Mm-hmm.
cross conference teams that play each other twice a year, I don't really see where that hatred would come from or that emotional response would come from. I mean, I'm all for letting them fight. Like, I don't really care if they fight or not. I mean, give the people what they want. People will love to watch a goalie fight. It will go viral on social media.
Of
Watching two
course.
goalies beat each other. It's hard to even swing with all the pads they have on.
They be swinging like this.
I mean, they don't even know how to fight. So,
No.
like, Ray Emery like knew how to fight. Like he did boxing, and he like that's why he would fight players too. Because I don't know if you remember after that fight, Brian got his ass beat, then Andrew Pierce
Yeah.
stepped in to fight
Yeah,
Ray
okay.
Emery for him.
Yeah, that's the ironically enough, that's the only Ray Emery fight that I remember because
I believe he's
bro
gotten
was
in other fights before, but he was known to throw a few punches.
he
He
throw
did boxing on
hands.
the side.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could fight. No, he knew how to fight.
Oh, for sure. One of the few
Yeah.
goalies that actually knew how to
Hmm.
fight, from my
No, I
recollection
think
at least.
he's one of the oldie goalies that knew how to fight. Definitely.
Let's hop over to the Columbus Blue Jackets in the West, in not the Western Conference, Jesus, the Eastern
That was a long
Conference.
time ago.
Yeah. Go. So the Blue Jackets ended up getting cold at the wrong time. It was looking like they would be
They
up
were in a really good
there.
spot like 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and they ended up losing like 5 or 6 straight games. I think it was 6 straight games. They finally got the win against the Islanders to snap their skid. But according to MoneyPuck.com, their chances are down to 6.3% to make the playoffs. However, though, last week they were at 5.7, so they went up 0.6%.
That was a big win over the Islanders.
Huge
Like
win.
definitely. I mean, you love to see that in regulation, but you don't want to give the Islanders a point, a team you're directly competing with. I just don't see it for this year for the Blue Jackets to to make that playoff push. I think that losing streak kind of ended their playoff hopes realistically. I mean they
Did
could
it
still
though?
definitely get in, but I mean, the Eastern Conference wild card race is such a mess right now. Because realistically, like, I don't think the Red Wings should really be in the playoff conversation anymore. They're not good. They're 3-7
No,
in their
they're not
last
good.
10. They're one game over 500. They should not be a playoff team, but they're 3 points out.
I think there's only two other teams that really deserve that. Yeah, that do deserve to be in the playoffs right now, outside of Ottawa, of course, is Montreal and New York. I think those are the two teams
Which New
that.
York?
The Rangers. Sorry, I forgot that the
Okay.
Islanders are back in this thing. Um, the Islanders are somehow in a position to make the playoffs again, even though they somehow keep finding ways to do this. I think Columbus might miss just by a couple points. They feel like they're. I feel like they're in the same boat as Detroit, where they can string together some wins here, but ultimately a couple losing streaks on the stretch really killed both of their seasons and poor play. And going to the Columbus Blue Jackets because I do think it'd be a feel good story for them to get into the playoffs, but ultimately it wouldn't be a competitive first round. They get swept, or maybe they'd win one game and takes the Capitals to 5 games. But their upcoming schedule, though, it's not bad, but also I've definitely seen like an easier schedule. They have the Canucks, which is tough. Senators, Predators, Avalanche, Maple Leafs, Senators. They play the
Which team is this?
Senators. They play what's up?
Which team schedule is this?
The Blue Jackets. They played the
Okay.
Senators 3 times. They played the Capitals twice. That's 5 games alone against playoff teams. Plus, you have the Canucks, which are fighting for their playoff lives right
They
now.
have to
And
play the
then,
Sens 3 times the rest of the year.
yeah, they play them March 29th, 6th, and 8th.
That's wild.
That is. And then they have a huge game against the Islanders, their last game of the season, April 17th.
I mean,
So
that could honestly be for a playoff spot. I mean,
that
Montreal's been playing pretty well lately. They seem to be in every game. Uh, the Rangers are still very much in it. I mean, Ottawa has kind of cooled down a little bit. They had a big winning streak after the trade deadline, and they've kind of cooled off a little bit. They're still probably in the best spot out of all these wild card teams. Being 4 points. I mean, 5 points ahead of the Islanders. They should make the playoffs. We'll see what happens.
I don't know. I would love to see Montreal in the playoffs. Though.
I think that'd be a lot of fun
I
for them
would
to
be
see.
okay with these two wildcard teams in the playoffs. Like we talked about it probably a couple months ago when we saw the Eastern Conference race really shaking out and seeing certain teams separate from others. We both wanted Ottawa and Montreal in the playoffs. Like those are our top two teams if it wasn't for Columbus, if I recall correctly.
I'm fine with any of the teams making the playoffs except for the New York Islanders and the New York Rangers.
Really? Really the
I just don't.
Rangers?
I just don't like them.
That's fair. I mean, I like them for Igor's sake and Panarin's sake. I really love those players, but not my top choice, but also not my worst choice. I would not want to see the Islanders in the playoffs. Don't get me fucking started on this dumbass team, please, please.
Yeah, I just don't. Yeah, I don't find them fun to watch. I think the Rangers are a pretty boring team that rely too much on their goalie. I think
Hmm.
same thing with the Islanders because Soroka's been good this year. He's having a bounce back year. I mean, I just want to see some new blood in the playoffs because I feel like for the last few years, you're just getting the same teams every fucking year,
Hmm.
especially in the East. Like the Atlantic bracket has not really changed much. This year, Boston won't be in it. That's really going to be it.
And they're just not going to make the playoffs at all as a whole. And I mean, you
Yeah,
still have like the same, like the top three teams in the Atlantic
that's what I'm
Division.
saying. Is like, but it's usually it's for the last few years. It's always been Toronto, Florida, Tampa, and Boston making the playoffs every year.
Right, and now Boston's out of it, but you bring Tampa, so they're still in it, and then I mean it feels nice to actually have two new teams in the wild card for once, at least right now.
I'm just
Like,
kind of sick of seeing like the same matchups all the time.
yeah, and it's nice too that Washington is atop the Metro right now, and we haven't seen Carolina or New Jersey in the playoffs since did they face in 2022?
Yeah,
Yeah, second
they played
round.
in the second round. Yeah,
Yeah, and Carolina fucking killed them. I'm pretty
just
sure.
because the Devils had no goaltending.
Yeah, they had absolutely none whatsoever. Yeah, so I mean, right now, outside like in the Atlantic bracket, we've seen Florida and Tampa before, but clearly not as much as Toronto and Florida at all. So I wouldn't mind the Florida Tampa series. The last time they faced in the playoffs, I believe, was 2022, and Tampa
Last year.
killed them. Oh, did they play last year
Yeah, Florida, I think, beat them in 5.
in the first round?
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot they played in the playoffs last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Tampa was a wild card team. It was not a competitive series.
Oh yeah, because the Rangers got the Capitals because Tampa finished wild card one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that now. So the how the East is shaking out, I'm completely fine with it. I'm hoping it stays like this, truthfully.
I
But
mean,
I
I
mean,
don't think it's going to stay like this. I think this is going to be a wild last few weeks for that regular season.
can we please have these teams just winning hockey, not losing hockey like last year? Like right now, it feels like these teams are actually winning hockey games. We're gonna see a lot of flip flopping going back and forth.
I don't know. From what I'm seeing, most of these teams have not been playing really well down the stretch. Boston's 2-7-1 down the stretch.
Well,
Detroit
Boston,
3-7-0. Columbus 2-7-1. New York Rangers 3-6-1. The only three teams in those conversations that have a winning record in the last 10 games are the Senators, the Canadians, who are 4-2-4, so 4 right overtime losses, and the Islanders, who are 5-2-3.
if you're the Canadians, you take those overtime losses though, just to
Yeah,
get
no, you take
stack up
any
points.
point you can
Obviously, you
get.
want the extra point at the end of the day in a race like this,
One
but
point can make all the difference.
that is exactly Detroit fans know all about that.
So do Sabres fans, because we might be
Exactly.
not be talking about year 15 of the drought.
Yes. Instead
We could be
of
talking about year 3.
yes, exactly. Which is rough.
Big difference.
A huge difference. Let's hop over to the Western Conference, and we're going over to that wild card race because things have picked up. How about them fucking St. Louis Blues, baby? Let's give it up for them because
Yeah, they've been playing really, really well. Yeah.
they're 8-1 in their last 10. They have won 7 straight games. In fact, in their last 18 games now, make it. They are 14-2-2. They got a huge W last night as well.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go, baby. And listen, they're 3 games up on Calgary, which if Calgary ends up going 3-0 in those games, they would be 2 points ahead of St. Louis or a point ahead, whatever. I'm not doing the fucking math. And then Minnesota is only 2 points ahead of St. Louis, but also they have a game in hand. So St. Louis right now has one of the most games played in the entire NHL. But nonetheless, though, an incredible run they're on. The best record in the NHL since the Four Nations break. And overall, though, this team right now, they have a 54.3 chance, 50, Jesus Christ, 54.3% chance to make the playoffs per moneypuck.com, and they are minus 140 to make the playoffs on BetMGM.
I mean, I'll just say I think they will make the playoffs. I think honestly, realistically, I think the only team in the West that I think could take them out is Calgary. I
Yeah,
think Vancouver might be done.
I'm with you. And Utah was making it a thing at one point, and then they ended up playing average hockey. They went on a decent run, and unfortunately, I think them being 8 points out now that's all she wrote for them. They're gonna miss out by I think 6 points.
Because Calgary has been playing well too. Like they're
Yeah.
6-2-2 in their last 10. Like they're not going away. The Blues have played 3 more games than the
Mm-hmm.
Flames. So if you assume that Calgary, I mean that's not a guarantee. But if Calgary wins those 3 games, they are behind. For St. Louis, I believe Calgary will be in the final wild card spot.
Yes,
I mean,
and
but they're approaching Minnesota right now for wild card 1.
I mean
They're only
Minnesota's
two.
now
They're only 2 points out behind Minnesota. I still think Minnesota should make the playoffs, but man, they have not been good the last couple months.
Minnesota. I mean, granted, has Kaprizov come back from injury yet?
No, he's still out.
No, huge. No, like
They are a
again.
completely different team when he doesn't play.
Oh, they are such a completely different team. I'm gonna go over these teams scheduled because the Blues, frankly, they don't. Jesus Christ, they do not have a lot of games
Yeah, they only have
played
9
left.
games left. Yeah.
Yeah. So the St. Louis Blues schedule, they play the Predators tomorrow, and then they play the Avalanche, the Red Wings, the Penguins, the Avalanche, the Jets, Oilers, Kraken, and then Utah. Their schedule isn't too bad. And
I
then
mean, they should be the Predators
yes,
tomorrow.
they should beat the Predators. I think they'll lose to the Avalanche, but again, the Blues are hot. You never know. I think they'll beat the Red Wings, Penguins, lose. I don't know. They might beat the Avalanche. They might beat the Jets. I don't know, but there's gonna be I think 3 losses in the Blues'
I
final
think
9 games.
Colorado will be a good test for them because if they win tomorrow against well it'll be tonight of that time
Hmm.
we upload this. They beat the Predators and they go. Is it in Toronto or St. Louis? I mean, in Colorado or St.
It's
Louis?
in Colorado, March 29th, and then April 5th is in St. Louis.
So if they go into Colorado on this weekend on an 8 game winning streak, that will be a really good test for them to see if they can beat a big boy.
And if you're St. Louis going into that game and you're on an 8 game winning streak, you're not sitting there and being like, you know what, let's try to at least snag a point out of this. No, you want to go in there and show the rest of the league that you can hang with the top contenders in the league. Even if you're not going to face Colorado in the playoffs, which frankly I think the Blues will be a first round exit if they get in, just show the league it's like, you know, we're not messing
I don't
around.
think they're
This
going to
isn't a
be an
fluke.
easy out. They're playing
No,
really good
for
hockey
sure.
right now, and man, do the Boston Bruins look stupid for firing Jim Montgomery? We both said it was stupid when it happened.
Hmm.
I think it was a very reactionary hot firing. A really good quote I saw, a story I saw was when they played the Canucks last week. Uh, Jake DeBrusk got interviewed, and they were asking him about his experience playing was Jim Montgomery in Boston last year was, and he just straight up said he saved my career.
I didn't see that at all, but that's a very, very interesting quote from Jake DeBrusk. Jim
I
Montgomery's a
mean,
great coach. The Bruins
yeah,
were they overreacted, like you said, with that firing, and we said it when it happened. We were like, "What the f are the Bruins doing?" They just let go their best coach since Jesus. I don't know, probably Bruce
probably since
Cassidy to be honestly.
no, they had what was his name? I mean, Bruce Cassidy was also a great coach. Uh, I heard they had to fire him though because the players didn't
Their
really like him too
relationship with
much.
the relationship with the players was
Shit,
rough.
what was the Claude Julien was their coach for a
Yeah.
long time too. He was also a pretty good coach.
So I get Boston at least as of late. They have a very interesting reputation with firing coaches like the second that they start doing bad. But again, Jim Montgomery is a hell of a
He was
coach.
coach of the year winner.
Right, the players were clearly upset when they traded when not when they traded, when they fired him. Like
Oh, I
you
think it was extremely reactionary. I think they fired the wrong guy. Honestly, I think the GM is the issue in Boston.
yes, thank you. And
I think
Frank
Boston fans would agree with me.
Boston fans will 1,000% agree with you, and they agreed with us when we talked about the firing and the Blues cashed in. Usually, you don't see coaches get
He
fired
had a
and
job
then
like a week later. That's unheard
exactly,
of in the
exactly.
NHL. Oh,
The
coach gets
Blues,
fired is like, you want our job?
the Blues saw that shit and they're like, don't mind if we do.
Yeah.
And yes, and the Blues right now are in a playoff spot because of Jim Montgomery. And it's more than just him. Jordan Binnington's been phenomenal. Kyrou has been on a tear. Thomas has been great. Honestly, Parayko has played some
Dylan
great
Holloway,
hockey.
man, what a pickup.
Holloway and Broberg have been great, especially Dylan Holloway.
I mean, he's having a career year this year. I can't believe Edmonton put themselves in such a bad situation where they literally couldn't even like sign him to like cheap deals as RFAs.
Nothing. They couldn't do anything.
Not
Not
like they
even.
like St. Louis went and said, "What's the least we can offer them that we know Edmonton can't match?" They offered it to them, and then they gave up a second and a third
And yeah,
for two first round pick players coming off of their ELCs.
Dylan Holloway, by the way, is third on the team in points right now with 60 points,
He's only 23
73
years
games.
old.
I hope he keeps playing like this for St. Louis because St. Louis needed depth, and Holloway has added that. He's
Oh
a.
no, he's gonna. I have a feeling that they're gonna probably extend him as soon as they can
I mean, July 1st, he's eligible for an extension, I believe.
because they got Jordan Kyrou locked up, Robert Thomas locked up. I think the next guy they need to lock up is Dylan Holloway, without a
Dylan,
doubt. He's been really good fit on that team, and I see him being a long part of that team's long term future.
yes, I'm with you, and he's young, and he's a guy where the St. Louis Blues needed a guy like Holloway, and they got him, and they were honestly low key gifted Holloway and Broberg from the Oilers. They offered
Why didn't
just
anybody else do that? I don't understand that.
because they're sitting on their ass, apparently.
Because I
Apparently,
get like they didn't have amazing seasons last year, but they're both 23 years old.
This
They
is
just
what
came off their
happens.
ELCs. Like it takes time for these players to get good.
They're they're not just going to up and out be this point per game scorer unless you're Dylan Holloway. But also, he's a point per game since Jim Montgomery became head coach of the Blues, I think 50 games ago. So, again, this could be a little bit of a Jim Montgomery coaching thing where he's coached him
Yeah,
up
I
and he's
think
been
that
good.
definitely helped take especially Dylan Holloway, to the next level of
Hmm.
playing. But the kid looks legit.
Yeah. And I'm looking into Jake Neighbors, who has 41 points in 73 games. He's going to put up a 20-goal season, and he's already topped the career high in points, on which he set last year, and he had 38 in 77 games. He had 27 goals last season. However, though, he has improved his playmaking ability and his defense. He has 22 assists compared to 11 last year and 4 last games, sorry. And then he's also an even zero compared to last year, where he was a minus 16. However, though, even the year before, in only 43 games played, he was a minus 19. So I don't like taking plus minus as like a thing, a major statistical category. But going from a minus 16 to a zero in a year times frame is honestly it's really
I mean
good for a guy like
that is
Neighbors.
telling. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into plus minus. I think it's a bit
Hmm.
of a flawed stat
Very.
because you can have nothing to do with the play, and like you could be a winger covering your point man in the defensive zone, and the puck never even goes into your area, so you don't really do anything, and you can't really do anything, and they score, you're a minus.
And I brought up Neighbors because he's 22
Yeah.
years old. He's
Hmm.
super young. He feels like he's a part of this St. Louis Blues core. And I remember at one point, even just like a year and a half ago, it felt like the St. Louis Blues are dead. We were talking about, well, the NHL was talking about they should just go into a full-out rebuild, trade Kyrou, trade Thomas. You know what they said? They shoved it down their throats. They signed Thomas and Kyrou to long-term extensions. So this is telling me that the Blues they're gonna try to retool. And right now, they've done a great job retooling, and Armstrong has done a great job in hiring Montgomery. It was the greatest thing that could have happened to this franchise since hiring Berube, which they ended up eventually going to the Cup final and winning the entire thing. So the St. Louis Blues, man, if they play their cards right, if Armstrong plays their cards right, they have the depth, they have the young talent on this team. Build around it, and I have trust in Armstrong to do so because he's done it before. And I think he can do it again. We'll just see. Time will tell where this team takes us.
I honestly think they could use a stand to add a little bit more bottom six depth. I'm not too familiar with
Mm-hmm.
their team, so I'm not sure, how their composition's built. I mean, they got Bennington for a couple more years. Joel Hofer hasn't been a bad backup for them.
No, and this is the thing with their goaltending is Hofer is only 24, right? He's been a great backup for St. Louis. He's been serviceable. He's putting up just about the same amount of numbers as Jordan Bennington. And there's two things that you can take into account. A, when Bennington's contract is up, you can be like, you know what, we'll sign you to like another, let's say a 2-year deal, for example, right?
Hmm.
And maybe they're gonna split time, or maybe if Bennington keeps playing, how old is Bennington? He is 30,
Bennington's
so
getting pretty
he's
old, yeah.
31. So maybe they decide to let Bennington walk, or maybe sign him to a cheap deal, but be like, listen, you're going to be your backup. You're 33 years old. Hofer has shown signs of promise. He's going to be our starter from here on out. And if you're not okay with that, you can hit the open market, or he becomes more like a veteran role and he really mentors Hofer. But I do think Hofer's playing great. And you brought up the Blues depth. I agree with you. They can improve certain parts of their depth, but I do think their depth isn't bad. They went out and they got Faxa and Matthew Joseph over the offseason. They haven't been bad for them, right? They've been playing those bottom pair minutes in that fourth line role. And, I mean, there's only so much you can do playing 15 minutes a night and then like 10 minutes a night for Joseph. So of course you're not gonna have a team. We're not gonna see a team like a Dallas or Colorado where you have like your top 10 guys putting up a half a point per game, but you're getting contributions everywhere. Whether it's special teams with the power play and penalty kill, whether it's defensive zone faceoffs, offensive zone faceoffs, whether it's defensive zone pressure where you put out your third and fourth line for a defensive zone draw, and even if they lose the faceoff, they're not letting pucks in the middle of the ice, and then they regain possession and they dump and chase on the ice and they work the corners in the offensive zone. So that's why looking at based off of the stat sheet, like you have Colton Parayko, who has been great offensively in the 94th percentile in offense among players in the NHL. He has 35 points in 62 games. He's your seventh leading point scorer, which on paper doesn't scream like a playoff team, but this team does good enough where they can win 3-2 games, 4-2 games. They have Thomas, Cairo, and Holloway really carrying the load up there. And then they have good enough goaltending where if you need them to win you a game, they can do it. But it's not a goaltending tandem where you go into the playoffs and be like, I can trust this tandem 1,000% to go steal us a game or steal us a series. Now, they could prove me wrong. I know Blues fans, if you guys are listening or watching this, you guys might believe in Binnington and Hall for more than me. But the thing that I believe in is those top guys. If you get Kyrou, Thomas, Holloway, Shen, Buchnevich, even Neighbors and Parayko, like if you get those guys going, whether it's offensively, defensively, or in any phase of the game, the Blues are going to be scary in the playoffs. And like you said, they're not going to be a tough out. Now, the only thing that concerns me is getting in the playoffs, they needed a very hot streak. They were like 8 points out at the Four Nations break. They weren't looking so great. It was maybe they were possibly going to be sellers, selling off a guy like maybe Braden Shed, their captain, maybe trading. No, sorry. They ended up okay, I forgot a guy. They extended Buchnevich too, I believe, too. I think
Yes.
yes. So I totally forgot about that. So scratch the whole selling thing. I don't think they were gonna sell. I totally forgot they ended up doing the Buchnevich thing. I just ate my own words in like 2 seconds. But
The
yeah.
one thing I will give him about like we were talking about the goaltending earlier is
hmm
Jordan Binnington knows how to show up in big games.
Yeah, that you know what? That's a good point.
So like he kind of hits another level in the playoffs. He was really everyone was like talking shit about him at the Four Nations face off. He might be the reason why Canada won the game.
He was the
Like
reason why
won the tournament. He was so good, especially in overtime. He was ridiculous.
he won them that overtime series. He won them that game in general.
Mm-hmm. But
That
he was excellent. Yeah.
he had 3 saves within like a minute and a half. 2 on Matthews, 1 on Kachuk.
Mm-hmm.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. And that's the one thing about Bennington is he may put up pedestrian numbers, but there's a reason why Canada went out and got him instead of a guy like Logan Thompson. And there's could still be pushback on the why Logan Thompson should have made it over Bennington.
I
But
think the Logan Thompson thing's a little bit of a different situation. I don't think it was more about his playing the ice. I think it was other things.
yeah, we did go over that when it
Yeah.
happened. Okay, yeah, you're right. Forgot about that. Yeah, but even then though, Bennington was the right choice. He comes up in big games. It was a 4-game tournament.
Well, he's
So
the right choice because they won. If they would have lost, everyone would have been flaming him.
well, okay, but also there's a difference between like if he put up that performance, but then USA still won. Just be like Bennington left it all on the ice. Canada, they just couldn't get it done when it mattered, but instead they
Hmm.
did. And now if Bennington went out there and allowed 5 goals on like 25 shots or something like that, and they lost like 5-2 or 5-3, it'd be like okay, Bennington, where were you? You weren't great. But so I guess it's different circumstances too, and that's the one thing that I guess Blues fans could have is Bennington shows up when it matters the most, and maybe I'm still underplaying the confidence that I should have in Bennington going into the playoffs if they do end up snagging the final wild card spot. But
Hmm.
let me ask you this: do you have confidence that the Blues can catch up to Minnesota and take that first wild card spot away from them?
Yeah, I think if they keep playing this definitely.
And if Minnesota keeps faltering like how they are, it's possible for sure.
I mean, there's
And
a small chance they might not make the playoffs. I think they should still make the playoffs. But, but yeah, if St. Louis keeps playing with this, I could definitely see them pushing Minnesota out for that first wild card spot. I mean, I don't really think St. Louis cares who they play in the playoffs, whether it's the
mhm.
Jets or Vegas. Whoever ends up winning the Pacific Division should be Vegas. But I mean, the
I-
Kings have been playing well too. Edmonton's dealing with a lot of injuries right now. But yeah, no, for sure, I could see St. Louis pushing Minnesota out of that wild card one spot.
it is kind of intriguing looking at Winnipeg and Vegas. Winnipeg's going to most likely have that first spot in the Western Conference. You're going to have Vegas at 2. Let's say Vegas ends up having to play St. Louis in the first round. That's a tough out if you're Vegas, right?
Hmm.
Vegas is going to have a tough time against St. Louis. And even Winnipeg against St. Louis, too. Those are two divisional rivals. you're going to have a St. Louis team which is very familiar with the Winnipeg team. They're going to have the scouting report on Connor Hellebuck, and I'm not saying St. Louis is not going to have one on Aiden Hill, but you see a team like Winnipeg inside your division more than Vegas, right? So you're going to have more familiarity actually playing against Connor Hellebuck, and we all know the history with Connor Hellebuck. In the playoffs, he doesn't have a great track record. So maybe St. Louis can pounce on that opportunity. Not saying that St. Louis would beat them in a 7-game series, but we've seen crazier shit happen. So again, if you're Winnipeg or Vegas, you don't want to see St. Louis. And right now, I'd rather face Minnesota in the first round. But if Kaprizov is being held out until the playoffs and he comes back game one, I wouldn't want to face them either because Gustafsson, I mean, he can turn it on in a blink of an eye. Kaprizov can, and if the Minnesota Wild they're fully healthy going into the playoffs too, I think they're going to be tough out as well. But I mean, we'll see how it plays out in this Western Conference race. If Calgary gets hot too, they can knock out either St. Louis or, I mean, maybe Minnesota.
I think there's a very small chance that Minnesota doesn't make the playoffs. They'd have to have a pretty horrific end of the year.
They would have to lose a good 5 or 6 straight games to have it happen.
Yeah, and Calgary would have to go on a heater.
Yeah. I mean,
They are playing really well right now. They're on a 4-game winning streak, but they've been very close games.
Yeah. Calgary has to keep winning those close games. Even though Calgary is 3 games in on 3 games on hand of St. Louis, even if you go 3-0, it's still going to be tough. You're going to still need St. Louis to cool down a little bit. And the only thing about St. Louis going on this run is their season ends April 15th, which I believe is 2 days before the regular season ends for the entire NHL. Transitioning over to the Calgary Flames, you brought up a good point where they're going to need to get hot down the stretch in order to make the playoffs. But
ironic. Oh, the Flames have to get hot.
That pun flew over my head. No pun intended, by the way, clearly. But they have a tough stretch of games coming up between playing the Stars, Oilers, Avalanche, and then they play Utah and Anaheim, which, our 500 teams are not going to be hard, but they're also not going to be easy games either. And then you have Vegas, Minnesota. You have Vegas twice, and then you play Minnesota and LA as well. You have the Sharks twice, the Ducks twice. So you have a mixture of difficult games that I feel like you should be like, you know what, let's get a point out of this. And then games like you play the Sharks twice, which their defense is horrific. Their goaltending is horrific. Go out and get 2 points. And then if you can sneak out a point against a team like LA or Vegas or Minnesota or Colorado, Edmonton, whatever, like maybe pounce on a team like Edmonton, which is dealing with McDavid and Draisaitl out, go out and win that hockey game and get 2 points out of that game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think for the Flames, I think they kind of welcome. For them, for me, I think this is a really good litmus test to see if they are a playoff team, because they have 3 tough. They have to play Dallas, Edmonton, and Colorado. 2 of those games on the road, all tough. Even without McDavid and Draisaitl, I still think that's a tough game. They got to play Vegas twice. Also, they got to play the Kings again, the Wild. So they're playing a lot of playoff teams to end the year. They do have 2 games against the Sharks, so they should win.
Yeah.
This is a really good test because they've been playing playoff hockey for like the last month.
Go out,
especially with how tight of these games they're playing. Like, just look at their winning streak they've had. Like New York 2-1, Devils they won by 5-3, Islanders 4-3 overtime, Seattle 4-3 overtime. So they're used to playing in tight games. So I think that's something they can bring to their advantage. Is I don't think they're nervous to be up by a goal in a game.
This team has done this all season too. It's not just recently. They've been winning 2-1, 3-2.
They're not a flashy team. They just play well as a team. They're not going to let lamp and score like 7 goals all the time. Like, they're very comfortable winning 2-1 games, 3-2. Like, they're very comfortable in tight games.
It also helps Dustin Wolf is playing at a ridiculous level.
Yeah, they rely on their goaltending, but they play well as a team. Like, they're very a team. They don't have a superstar. Like, I mean, they have Jonathan Huberdeau, and Kadri's been good, but I wouldn't call them superstars anymore. So they don't have that star power that a lot of these other playoff teams have, and they have to rely more on everybody contributing.
They're very team oriented, and I mean, I guess if you want to call Dustin Wolf a star, go for it. I mean,
he's a budding star.
Yeah, and if the Calgary Flames end up getting in over a team like St. Louis or somehow Minnesota, again, very small chance, give Dustin Wolf the Calder because this dude is flat out carrying this team. And fun fact, the tidbit that I actually found out this morning is Nazem Kadri is the first Calgary Flame in Flames history to score an overtime winner in back-to-back games. So
Oh, he's been clutch lately.
he has
Yeah.
been, yeah. Kadri's been good for them this season. Same with Huberdeau. Again, they're not having that point per game seasons that maybe when you sign them to the contract you'd expect, but they're having better seasons in a Calgary Flames uniform. And I think the wild card race is down to really two teams with Calgary and St. Louis, but Vancouver's only a point behind Calgary, but also a game in on hand. Um, and Pedersen and Nils Hoglander were sent home a few days ago. Was it due to injury or
Yeah,
sickness?
injuries. Yeah.
Injuries?
They
Are
went they
they
went back to Vancouver to get a closer look. I don't know, have an update. I'm not sure if
so
anything's
they're
changed with
still
that.
so they're still undisclosed as of this recording at the moment.
I know they will not be returning on their road trip.
The Canucks are done. They're just if I'm the Canucks, my best interest is just be like, just get this fucking season over with already, man. It's been a
I mean,
complete
it's been
disaster.
a very roller coaster of a season for them. Having to deal with all the drama at the beginning of the year with Pedersen and JT Miller that took way too long to resolve. I'm sure if they look back at this season, reflecting, at end of the year meetings, that one thing they're probably going to agree on is like we probably should like just handle this earlier and maybe refuge some of our season because that definitely played effect into this team.
I mean, you can tell by JT Miller's body language when he ended up actually playing the Canucks a few nights ago. JT Miller gave a little nudge to Quinn Hughes after a whistle along the boards below the goal line. His body language showed that he didn't really like the Canucks that much. And I don't know if it's the players themselves. I don't know if it's just the team as a whole. But remember that Reddit post that I sent in the group chat a few months ago when like everything started to surface out and stuff
Hmm.
was
Yeah.
well, somebody ended up circling back to that under the like in the comment section of the video where I saw the little nudge to Quinn Hughes. And somebody said that Reddit was probably right. Like that wasn't any bullshit. And I was thinking about that and I kind of agree. That Reddit post, for you guys that don't know, just search up on Google like JT Miller Reddit, and then it'll probably be the first thing that comes up because it was like actually going kind of viral between like on Reddit and then like within the NHL Reddit community. So that was very interesting, and I think it was an issue that the Canucks should have solved earlier with JT Miller.
I mean, I think it was a situation where they think they saw like when Miller and Pedersen and everyone was getting along, they saw how good they could be. They had
Mm-hmm.
an amazing season last year. I mean, I think most people probably understood they weren't going to be able to recreate, like winning the division again and having that 50 wins. Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see that happening this year. I thought they were a playoff team. But just seeing if they could find some way to resolve whatever issues are going on and just focus on playing hockey, they saw how good it could be, and I think that's what helped made them hold on to these players for so long. It's like we know it's tough right now, but if we can fix this, like we could be great again. Because their roster is not really too different from the team they had last year, minus a couple players here and there. I mean, Thatcher Demko missing almost the whole season does make a difference, for sure, which is another factor into this year is probably why they signed Lincoln into that extension is they just don't have good availability for Thatcher Demko, and I think that will be a very big issue going into whatever team gives him his next contract because I don't think it's going to be the Canucks.
No, and we talked about it briefly earlier on this episode. Who knows? Maybe they decide to move on from him and trade him this offseason. There hasn't been any rumors that we have a source to back that up, but I mean, anything's a possibility. Personally, I do think they should.
I don't know, crazy idea here. I just popped in my head. So like another really needy team for a goaltender are the Edmonton Oilers. They have a player in a bit of a different situation with Stuart Skinner where he's available, he's just not consistent at all. And Thatcher Demko, I believe, is a better goaltender than Stuart Skinner. Let's say they both have a year left on the contract. Thatcher Demko does have a little bit of a higher salary hit. Do you just swap them?
Like one for one, like there's nothing else in the deal, or like
Maybe I would see maybe Vancouver, Edmonton, maybe having to throw in
a
a
draft pick.
maybe an extra player like a bottom role player just to eat some cap hit
Mm-hmm.
because because they don't have any cap space really. I don't know how much they have going into next
Mm.
year, but they don't really have a lot of cap space to work with. I mean, they do it. They're $20.8 million, so they could probably or convince Vancouver to eat some of it and maybe throw in a draft pick. But is that something that would make sense to you, where two teams are just looking kind of like? Because I think Skinner could still be good. I just think he just needs to get out of Edmonton. He needs a fresh start.
Yeah, and I'm trying to make it make sense in my head because for
Because I
Vancouver
think that
side
would
of
be a
it,
worthwhile bid for the Oilers because they need a more consistent goaltender. And if Demko can throw his injuries concerns behind him, I think the Oilers would be better off with him than Stuart
that
Skinner.
well, I think outside of injuries, yes, they're better off with him than Skinner. Again, my only concern is the injury. If he comes back to Edmonton and he's 100% healthy to start the season, then 2 months in, he's out for another 6 weeks with the injury.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like that's why I think it makes a little bit more sense for
Take that
Edmonton to
risk if
take
you're
that
Edmonton, though.
risk because their cup window is wide open right now because they don't have any they don't really have any prospects.
Mm-hmm.
Any they don't really have any many draft picks. They don't have a ton of money to spend. They have a lot of depth issues, and they don't have a goaltender that they trust.
Yeah, take that risk if you're Edmonton. Why not? Fuck it. Go ahead.
I'm
Fuck it
not.
with
I
it.
don't think it happens. I'm just spitballing ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And Vancouver's looking for something different. And you can take that risk bringing in Skinner. Hoping that he'll find his consistency. Because I think Skinner, when he's on his game, he's really good, but he's just not on his game enough. Like two
Yeah.
very different players. With Demko, you saw how good he could be, but then he's missing a ton of time. And then Skinner, the playoffs last year, he saw glimpses of being great, and then he'll have like 3 or 4 really bad games in a row. So that's just something to think about. It would not shock me if the Edmonton Oilers found some way to try to move off of Stuart Skinner, whether that's like just a goaltender swap or they bring in one of the few available free agent goaltenders on the market. It'll be interesting to see, but I mean, I guess the one thing that would really entice the Oilers to bring Skinner back, at least for another year, is that $2.6 million salary cap hit, even if he's a backup. I mean, they need the cheapest contract they can get.
Yeah, and maybe they don't do the deal because Demko is more expensive. But from just a team logistical standpoint, if we're not looking at salary at all, it makes sense just to do the 1-for-1 swap. If you're Edmonton, you have to take a risk. You already have no draft picks, no prospects, like you said. Go out and go get a Demko, who is, in my opinion, a better
I
goaltender than
think I
Skinner.
think they would have to give Skinner and something else for Demko. Like I don't think it'd just be one for
Yeah,
one. I think it'd be like maybe their second round pick next year, or like they have a third round pick this year. Like they have some draft picks left to make work.
I mean, I
But I
could
think if
see.
you're Vancouver, I don't think you just hang up the phone. I think you'd listen.
I mean, you have to listen though too,
Yeah.
and I mean, a change of scenery could also do the goaltenders, good for both. And if you're looking at Vancouver as well, you're like, you know what? We don't like the injury history of Demko. We're okay moving off of him now because we'd rather have a goaltender that can actually give you a 50 to 55 game season as well, and Stuart Skinner. So maybe the Canucks are sitting there and be like, maybe it's an easier decision now than it would have been a year and a half ago, or maybe even
Well, I
yeah,
think like a year and a half ago, if you would have brought up the idea of trading Thatcher Demko, they would have like, well, no, we're not trading him. Why would we trade him? He's
right,
great. But
yeah.
yeah, this year I think that's also been like I said, like the JT Miller Pedersen stuff definitely affected how they played, and then not having their starter goaltender affected them too.
Yeah, it's been rough. It's been rough for them, and hopefully, I want to see a guy like Pedersen better next year, and I want to see
I
a
think he'll
guy.
bounce back. I think he just needs to go on a nice vacation, decompress, get his mind off other things, and then get get in the lab and get ready for next year.
Didn't we also say that like last year too? But
Well,
also,
that
he was
was because
also
he had a
dealing with a
bad
knee
play.
injury too.
Yeah, he might that might still be a lingering issue. We don't know,
Maybe he has
but I think
arthritis. I don't know.
that definitely affected his play in the playoffs last year. But I think just with all the non hockey stuff that he had to deal with this year, the drama, go to Cancun, go somewhere in the middle of nowhere, be by yourself for a little bit, maybe do an Aaron Rodgers darkness retreat. Uh, I just be ready to go next year.
Yeah, come back
Maybe,
to training camp mentally. For sometimes that's all it takes too, is getting away from the game and for 2 months, or maybe let's say you're doing off ice training. Maybe it's not 2 months. Maybe it's like
Well, he
a
can't. He
few
can't. I don't
weeks.
think players don't really do that anymore. Like most players in the summer skate almost every day. They usually take like a
Yeah.
vacation, like for a week or two right after the season's over, and then they're back in the gym every day.
You know, let's say Vancouver misses the playoffs. Maybe it is like a 2-3 weeks, and then you're skating or doing whatever mentally. But then you're mentally really like away from the team. You're doing it with your trainer. Maybe you're doing it with a few guys around the league, around the team, whatever. You come back into training camp mentally refreshed. Your confidence is back. You've been skating. You feel good. Your body feels great. Sometimes it's all it takes for a guy to get back to his 90, 100 point self. So we'll see. Hopefully he bounces back next season, which both of us think he will.
I think Pedersen still has a lot of good hockey ahead of him.
Yeah, he's freshly off that contract extension. He better have a lot of hockey left in him. That's going to end it for today's episode. If you guys enjoy our content, all of our socials, including our Instagram, are down below for more exclusive content. If you guys are listening over on Spotify and Apple, head over to our YouTube, hit the subscribe and notification bell there for more content as well. We'll see you guys in our next episode.